everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree here today with another episode of Presenting Champions. Today is episode 229, I believe, and today I'm joined by a very, very special guest, Martinus Clay, known as Magnificent, former professional boxer who had at least 46 professional fights, was in there with some great names, including James Kirkland, Andre Berto, Saddam Ali, Kasim Umar, if I'm saying his name right, and a whole host of other names as well. So today we're going to be talking about his journey through boxing. There's a great story behind this. It's a story that hasn't really been told before in a public space, for the wider world. And even though today's guest doesn't have the prettiest record on paper, there's a lot more to his journey than what you can see just from looking at that record. He's consistently faced the biggest and the best names out there. So there's a lot to talk about today in the world of boxing. So Champ, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. And it's great to have you on here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really actually appreciate somebody actually wanting to hear about the other side of boxing. Most people want to hear about the undefeated, the glitz and the glamour, but nobody ever really, comes and asks about the other side, the other guys on the other end.
Absolutely. Well, today we are going to be asking about the other side. We are going to be hearing it from, your point of view in your own words, and hearing these stories that haven't been told, highlighting your life, but also highlighting, so many people and what they give to boxing that's not recognized, if you know what I mean. So absolutely. So obviously, starting at the beginning, we start with sort of the present day and work backwards. You've been retired from boxing for a good few years, I believe. Are you still involved in the sport now in any way, or have you just left it behind altogether type of thing?
So I fought my last fight in 2010, but I do currently train fighters, the average everyday Joe, guys, and I'm still staying close to the sport, training my son to be the next up and coming Clay. He has my same name. He's about 13 years old, and I train down in the gym, North Penn Boxing and Kickboxing down in Lansdale, PA.
Absolutely. Well, it's wonderful to hear that you're still involved in the sport, and I know that you have so much knowledge to give back to people, and to contribute to people. So that is wonderful news. Obviously, with retiring in 2010 to 2023, I mean, we're looking at coming up on 13 years. You've had some time to reflect on your career, starting with, a positive point with this. What would you say are some of your proudest moments? I know there's some things in your career that didn't go the way you wanted them to, but hopefully there's some things that you look back on and that you're proud of now. You should be. Can you share some of those with us, some of your favorite fights and things like that?
Yeah, man. I actually, I'm a lifetime boxer. I started around 10 years old. I had a pretty good amateur career. I actually made it to the Junior Olympic Nationals. I fought Chad Dawson in the Junior Olympic Nationals when I was about 15 years old. I fought Shakur Powell in the U.S. Championships when I was 18 years old in the amateur. So those were some big fights for me as an amateur. Like, it seemed like I always ended up fighting the big name guys, whether it was amateurs or professional boxing. On the professional circuit, a big win for me was the Matt Vander fight. He was a fighter that was about 34-1 when I fought him. We fought on ESPN. It was a televised fight. I won like every round, and I actually had a great night. I got to actually show what I was capable of doing on a high level, opponent where I was brung in to be an opponent, but I actually stepped up and had a real good victory that night. And it was other fights in my career where I had good nights. I didn't always get the nod. I got about 4 draws on my record where I think I clearly won the fight, but I was always the fighter fighting the guy in his hometown, his backyard. So you got to leave it to the judges.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to get some highlights in there, amateur and professional as well. I'm glad you mentioned both of them because I ask these questions very broadly sometimes to get good answers coming back. With that in mind, obviously, with your career, we're getting your story out there in a way that hasn't been told, right? So there's a lot of people watching this who know about boxing, a lot of professionals, amateurs watching this and everything. But for people who are sort of on the outside of the sport looking in, what would be some things that would you think would surprise people about the sport of boxing? I know this is a big question, but in terms of your life, and your story being told for the first time, in terms of like the way that your career was managed, in terms of the way certain things went on, what would be some surprises for people, do you think?
Well, as far as me as a fighter, I can't really speak for everybody, but I honestly never had management in my career, in my boxing career. I fought my first couple of fights with the guy that I thought was going to manage me, but he put me in a bad situation in my second fight, and I actually broke contract and went back home. And then I actually kind of was like winging it. I was young in the game, and me personally being a guy that I was young with a kid, I had responsibilities. I didn't really know much about the professional boxing circuit. So for me, I was taking any and every fight without management. I just was a guy. I knew a guy that was a guy that they would call to get opponents for people, and he used to be my condition guy, and I was like a gym rat. I was always in the gym, so he would get a call, and what was funny about it is most calls, most fights, even my big fights, I had about 2-3 weeks notice before the fight. I mean, I was just a guy that was always in the gym. But even my biggest fights, I probably never had more than a month of time to prepare for even the top level guys. I just was a guy that would take any fight. They knew I could fight, but they knew they could catch me, maybe not at the right time. I didn't know about these guys I was fighting. I was just willing to go get that check.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, it's a story you hear too often, people not having the right setup, people not having the right protection, and things of that nature. And we'll come back to that shortly because with this, I'm looking at your career as an overview, if you like, instead of moving to sort of linear time and going, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to look at it as an overview today. Obviously, you're a very skilled fighter. You were in there with some of the best people. You got chances to showcase your skills. Like I said to you when we were setting this up, I look past the record personally. I don't see it like that. I mean, they're just numbers on paper. When you understand the situations that went on behind that, there's
Right.
always a lot more to it. But from that point of view, how do people sort of respond to you now as a fighter in terms of when you're teaching people and things like that? Do they see past the record as well? I mean, I hope they do.
Most people that I work with, they don't really care about the record because they're not the average fight fan. The average fight fan doesn't understand what boxing is about. They think if you're not an undefeated guy, you really can't fight. But the people that I train and work with, they know me. They see me in the gym. They see my work ethic, and they basically know that I'm giving them from A to Z. It's only one way to fight and train as far as a fighter, and that's the fundamentals. And you start from there and work your way up. The record for me has always been a touchy thing for me because I used to be ashamed of it more so. Like I used to be like, look at my record, and it looks like I really can't fight. But if you really was a fight guy and you looked inside the record, I never fought a guy with more than one loss on his resume. So every fight that I went to, I was basically the opponent, and I was fighting a guy that was an undefeated up and coming prospect. So they were bringing me in for a reason, but I had the ability to fight. I really could fight. I just was in a bad situation where I really didn't have guidance and management to lead me along that path that you got to take as a fighter.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, first of all, like I said to you when we were setting this up, it's nothing to be ashamed of at all, man. I mean, like I said at the beginning, you were in there with, some of the best. And I know that, with your career, there's two sides to it. There's a lot of respect and appreciation for the people you were in there with. there is a tragic side in a way because you didn't get it, the chance to show your skill set in a way that would have been good, or you did a bit, but not enough, I would say. But at the same time, you've been in there with the best people. You never ducked from a challenge, you never moved away from a challenge. You always stepping up on short notice. So there's a lot of good things that I see in there personally to be
Yeah.
proud of, as well as a few things that are down as there's a lot of good things as well. People always want to hear about toughest fights and everything. Now, one of the things with this is this comes in different forms, doesn't it? Because toughest fights can be not only who hits the hardest, but sometimes it's the fastest guy, sometimes it's all different things, and sometimes it's what's going on outside of the ring, that makes the fight tougher. Well, actually, oftentimes I would say that's the real reason. So, in your own words, what would be a couple of the ones that stand out as the toughest fights you were in?
Ah man, I had some tough fights. Like it's funny. You most people would say the Birdo fight, the Kasim Uma fight, and those fights like that. But actually, to me, one of my toughest fights, I fought this guy in North Carolina early in my career for a little Carolina, local title. This guy Matthew Stroh, he was a good fighter. It was like we knew each other from the amateurs, and it was like one of those knock down, drag out fights where it went both ways, toe to toe, and it was like a really great fight. That was a toughest fight. You know what I'm saying? As far as tough fights. Now, when you want to talk about good fighters and pedigree and different things like that, I would definitely say, the Birdo fight was a big step up in fight and pedigree, and the Kasim Uma fight as well. I fought a guy, a tall, lanky, welterweight by the name of Mike Jones. He was a really good fighter, tough fighter. And I don't really put the James Kirkland fight into that category because, I had a lot of things going on in the James Kirkland fight, and I actually just didn't fight. I kind of, I took the easy way out. So I wouldn't put that in the toughest fight category when you put the names on the resume of guys I've been in there with. But, the Bertos, the Kasim Umas, the Mike Jones, those were some tough fights.
Absolutely. Well, when I ask that, man, it's a big question because, as you said just now, like a few minutes ago, you were in there with sort of tough guys all the time. You were in there with like undefeated guys or guys with these great records and everything all the time. So that's why I thought it was interesting to pick just one or two guys out of all of them, and everything like that. Now, shortly we'll get to a bit of like advice and things for young boxers, but before we do, getting some stories out of your career is good. When I speak to people on here, obviously boxing takes people all around, doesn't it? I mean, you often get like people come from an area and they get a chance to see different areas they wouldn't have seen otherwise and everything. Was that something for you that was also a highlight, getting to travel around different places?
Ah man, I'm from a little town in North Carolina called Wilson, North Carolina. They call it wide awake Wilson. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody in Wilson, North Carolina, is definitely wide awake, and you better not sleep on us. But we don't. A lot of the people from where I'm from, they don't. Especially at the time when I was coming up and fighting in the early 2000s, and in that time frame, didn't get out of North Carolina a lot. And I mean, I traveled, even as an amateur, I traveled around the world, fighting at big fights. I've been out to Colorado Springs for the Nationals, been out to Marquette, Michigan for the Nationals. I fought Berto in Tennessee at the FedEx Stadium, the arena. I forget the name of the place, but I've been in some casinos. You know, I've been a lot of places that I probably would have never been able to see if I wasn't a fighter. I really have got to see the world, got to meet good people. Good people in boxing, good fans. I've really enjoyed the experience of being a fighter, and I actually hate the fact that I can't be a fighter no more. Like I really, when I stepped away from the game, it was because I just felt like, I couldn't see myself being a loser in the game. So I wanted to give more to the game than I was giving at the time. So I just wanted to walk away with my wits and my sense and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it makes total sense. Health is wealth at the end of the day, as they say, health is wealth. So Um, I mean, as soon as we're talking about that these days, do you have much wear and tear from all the fights you had, or are you in pretty good shape?
I'm really honestly, I'm in really good shape. I mean, if you really know fighting and you know the game, you can tell when a guy's been, banged and beat up a lot by the way he looks and the way he talks. They call it punchy, being punchy,
Yeah.
their speech, and I had 46 fights and I had those fights in a 9 year span, from the time I was, you know, from what 2000 to 2010, 2001 to 2010. So I had those fights very fast in a short period of time. And honestly, I don't really feel like I don't, to be honest, I don't think I've ever really been beat up in a fight. Like I've lost some fights because I didn't do enough, I didn't work enough, I maybe, didn't get the judge's attention by, putting the pressure on the guy. But I don't think I've ever really been beat up in a fight. So as far as me, I'm healthy, strong. I still go 8, 10 rounds in the gym right now. I can put the headgear on right now, go 8, 10 rounds easy.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, that's the reason for asking that question, because when I'm talking to you, man, you seem happy, healthy, in a good space, and obviously you seem sharp as well. I have had some guys on here, and you do see the effects, man. You do when you're up close and personal, you do see certain individuals, and I'm not going to mention his name, but there was one guy on here, who's a really, really big champion, multiple time world champion I had on here, and he was in a terribly bad way, and I was shocked, and it's sad when you see that. So the fact that you've got out of that situation with all your faculties and everything, that's another blessing as well. And with the stories of fighting the best, all the best guys. Another sort of trivia question about boxing, if you like I said earlier about the toughest fight. Who would you say was the fastest guy that you fought, all in all, like hand speed,
And hand speed, uh, I probably give that to Berto. Berto was pretty fast. He was quick. At the time I fought him, he was on his way up, and he hadn't lost a fight yet. I was the first guy to take him out of the first couple of rounds. He was pretty fast. I think he had the hand speed edge. I'll give that to Berto.
Yeah. And what about power in terms of like the hardest hitters and everything like that,
Believe it or not, I won't say he had the hardest punch. I never really took a lot of good clean punches. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? I would say the most accumulative puncher would be like Kasim Uma. He hit you like with a barrage, or he was like a nonstop worker. So it became annoying. You know what I'm saying? That type of guy. But as far as the hardest hitting guy, man, I really, you know what? I do remember. I remember a fight. I fought a guy, and and I was surprised that he was cracking the way he was cracking. What was his name? I can't even recall his name. It was early in my career. I fought him in Glen Burnie, Maryland. And he hit me with a left hook. He cracked me with a left hook from out of nowhere. I mean, he was really cracking. I was like fighting at 140. I don't recall the guy's name, but after the fight, come to find out, the reason he was punching so hard was he failed the drug test. He failed. He had cocaine in his system, so maybe he was a little juiced up that night because he was cracking. I was like, man, he's at 140 cracking like this. That might have been the hardest I ever been hit cleanly. Because I mean, I was a defensive guy. I mean, I moved my head, I moved my feet. I didn't really take a lot of clean punches.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's just again, it's something to highlight out of all the guys that you were in there with. Man, cocaine in his system. Now that's a story. See, I told our audience there'd be some untold stories here tonight, but that is really something. On the subject of untold stories and things that people don't see from the outside looking in, people see like boxers training and they see obviously the all the work that goes in there. But in terms of the mental side, in terms of like no matter how hard you train and what you're doing, you're still obviously going in there to go to war with somebody. At the end of the day, that's a big part of what the sport is, even when it's technical and stuff. So how do you mentally prepare? Obviously, you will have been through a process from the amateurs and from, doing it for such a long time, so it would have developed. But I feel that that's something people don't see. Other fighters will know this, but like fans and regular people won't really know this. So in terms of that mentality, what was your process like on the build up to a big fight in your head type of thing?
I believe it or not, man, my mental demons honestly was my biggest downfall in boxing because a lot of times I never really knew my own abilities. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody would look at me and be like, oh man, this kid could fight. He got the goods. But when I would get in there mentally, my mental process, it was like this. If I knew I was in the gym every day, because like I said, I got a lot of short notice fights. So mentally, already I would already feel like because I'm getting a short notice fight, they're trying to bring me in as opponent. Mentally, I will already be on a, you know, kind of a low. You know what I'm saying? But if I knew I was in the gym and I was in good shape and I've been sparring and training hard mentally, that was enough for me. You know what I'm saying? My mental always came down to how good a shape I was in. It really wasn't about who I was fighting. I mean, the level, sometimes the hype of the level, like when I fought Berto on HBO, the moment got to me mentally more than the fight. I think, mentally, I think I broke down more than he broke me down. Like I just mentally wasn't prepared for the moment and what it took to fight on that level. It's really a big part of boxing. I mean, I know good fighters, that would tell you that boxing is like 85% mental and 15% physical. You know what I'm saying? Like seriously, it's the biggest part of boxing for me because I always was in decent shape. I didn't really have training camps, so to speak, because I wouldn't get a call with 3 months down the line or somebody making a fight for me. But I'm a gym rat, so I was always in decent shape. But man, mentally, if I knew I've been sparring, I've been doing my road work, I'm in tip top shape for whatever, top shape could be for me, then I knew I was going to have a good night because when you're in good shape, the punches don't feel the same, the rounds don't feel the same. It mentally kind of guides you through there. Mentally, you got to be prepared physically in order to be prepared mentally. You know what I'm saying? The mental, it'll break you down a lot faster than the physical will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something like just from being around boxing, with this show, but also from like what I do here in the UK with like the filming, photography, doing promotional stuff, being in camps with people. You do see the mental side of it, go right or go wrong. And even when people come together for the weigh-in or whatever, and there's like a stare down, often at that point you can tell like who's going to win, from the confidence and like the willpower that they bring, not just from how well they've trained or whatever. So that's part of the reason I highlight that. You've mentioned about being a gym rat though a couple of times and everything. What was your favorite part of training? I mean, what did you sort of enjoy most about the training aspect, as seeing as you were always in the gym all the time?
Where I come from, boxing wasn't really a big thing, you know what I'm saying? So for me being in the gym it was like my home, you know what I'm saying? As a kid, I come from a rough neighborhood, a lot of bully kids, I was like the only kid that went to the gym and made it out of maybe 10, 12 kids that went to the gym. I was the only kid that had the discipline to stay in the gym and do the hard work. Like we had tough kids, but they didn't have the discipline. So for me being a gym rat, man, I just fell in love with hitting the bags, doing the shadow boxing, sparring. You know what I'm saying? I just love to be in the gym because I knew that, in my situation anyway, as a fighter, I knew I had to be somewhat prepared because I wasn't going to get noticed. And I wasn't in a position where I could turn down any fight. I'm maybe a guy that would tell you I never turned down a fight. Like when they would tell me to fight in the name of the guy, it didn't matter who he was. I was like, as long as the check right, I'm gonna show up and give you 100% of what I got. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a gym rat to the aspect of just like my whole life since about 10 years old, since I walked into the boxing gym and got an opportunity to put the gloves on. that's been where I've been at from then until now consistently. That's what I've really done is stay in the gym. You know what I'm saying? Just be around boxing, being around boxing gyms because that's where I felt most at home. Like it separated me from in my city, you know, it was a lot of talent. You know, I played football, basketball, all those other sports. There was a lot of talent. The one thing that I could do that nobody else could do like I could do where I was from was fight and be in the gym. So I stayed in there because any test that, you know, came my way, especially where I was from, I was the king of the gym. Like, you know what I'm saying? What, you got this guy, he want 4 rounds. Oh, the next guy want 4 rounds. Oh, I was like Mayweather in the gym. I get every guy in the gym 4 rounds at the age of 15, 16 years old. You know what I'm saying? So I've always been that guy that just loves to be in the gym around boxing. I think that's why I could fight, you know, big name guys is because I sparred a lot and I just stayed in the gym. Like, because, you know, if you box a lot and you stay in the gym and you do it consistently, you know, I think it kind of prepares you for anything. You know what I'm saying? It just keep. That was why I stayed in the gym and called myself a gym rat because it's just that's what I do. That's where I love to be at. That's home for me.
Absolutely, man. I can tell 100% by the way, you know, you got such a big smile and your face just lights up talking about those times. It's a wonderful thing. But there's important lessons there, you know, because there's a lot of lessons there. Success breeds success, you know, if you're around other people with the dreams and the goals and like who you surround yourself with, so important. But the consistency as well, you know, being in there all the time, being consistent, you know, it's not having one good session, one bad session, whatever. It's like how all the sessions add up all together, you know, to get the result. And there's some good life lessons because when I do these, I try and share some, you know, some life lessons with people. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. You mentioned about the checks there as well and about the money side of it. Now, with this, obviously, I'm not expecting you to say how much you earn for certain things because that's a personal thing. But in terms of which fight was, you know, some of the best paid fights that you did have and everything from, you know, that level. What were some of the ones where, you know, where the money was pretty good type of thing?
I mean, for me, you know, at that time point, everything was pretty good. But no, the Berto fight was, you know, that was the highest level fight I had. So the Berto fight was really good for me personally. Um, Other than the Berto fight, I mean, I made some decent checks, but most of them, you know, was acceptable, but highest level was the Birdo. I fought Kirkland early in his career, so that wasn't a big money fight or nothing like that. And you know, you only get good money if you kind of fighting on a higher network level type of deal. So even though I fought a lot of big name guys, if I didn't fight them, like I mean, I did fight on Showtime, I fought on HBO, and I fought on ESPN. But if it wasn't a network fight, even if it was a big like name guy, if it was a club type fight, the pay was like, you know, average. You know what I'm saying? Even if it was a big name guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you on that, man. It's one of the things that again it highlights it, but there's a lot. I think with boxing, there's a lot of intangible benefits as well. What I mean by that is it's not always material things. It's like some of what we were talking about earlier with the pride of being in there with the best guys, you know, traveling around, you know, testing yourself. There's a lot of other things as well. But you know, the money is always good. Do you keep in touch with these guys, any of these guys now, like Berto or any of them? Have you seen many of them since then?
Haven't because you know, like for a long time, man. I mean, I stopped fighting, or you could say I retired in 2010, but I was kind of more so retired. Like you know, I used to love the game, and I stopped being able to get fights the way I was getting them. You know what I'm saying? And being that I ain't have management and stuff, I just didn't go to the fights or reach out to people, and I never kind of reached out to the guys after the fight because I felt like, man, we in the ring together. I don't really think they want to hear from me. You know what I'm saying? So I never really made those personal relationships with these guys. And I didn't go to fights and stuff. I was like the guy that stayed in the gym. I'll show up for the big fight, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't kind of, you know, go to fights, and I didn't call guys up. Like a lot of the guys I fought, man, I didn't even know these guys until I got that call. Even if they was a big name guy, you know what I'm saying? I might really didn't know this guy on that level. So, I didn't want to get to know the guy, you know what I'm saying? So I never really reached out to people too much.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and it makes sense, like if that's your way of doing things, it makes sense. What about following their careers though, in terms of like some of the guys you fought? Did you ever like watch their fights or see them on TV?
I always wanted to see how other people will fight them, because you know what I'm saying. You always feel like you could have did something better, especially when you lost. So I've definitely followed guys, because I felt like the more this guy wins, the more credibility that gives me as a fighter as well. Even though I might have lost the fight, if this guy turns out to be a pretty good or great fighter, then you got to know that I'm a pretty decent fighter myself. That's why I used to tell people anyway. I would be like, you know, if they always called me to fight the best fighters or the toughest guys, you gotta know that I gotta be able to fight a little bit, because they wouldn't use me to fight. The show wouldn't be entertaining if I couldn't put up a good fight. And that was my thing. I always put up a good fight. I mean, I got some decisions that I could have got. I put up a good fight, since I was always the game guy, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, absolutely. Always a game guy, 100%. And yeah, I mean, this is like going back to what I said earlier, but never turn anyone down. Always
yep.
stood up to the best challenges and everything, and that's something to be proud of. Little bit of sort of controversy is always good. So let's ask something about that. What do you consider to be like the biggest robbery or whatever, basically, that was perpetrated on you? Because I focused on the positives a lot, and I always like to focus on the positives and
Yeah.
on the bright side of things, because there's so much negativity in the world today, and there's so much newspapers and things that look on the downside of things. But just for a moment, with just a little bit of controversy, more for like a little bit of juice for people that they'll find interesting. Personally, what do you think is the most obvious example of a fight that you won that unfortunately went to the other guy instead, type of thing?
All right, so it's a guy right here in Pennsylvania, guy named Harry York. He was up and coming fighter at the time when I fought him. He was undefeated fighter. I fought him over at the Spectrum over in Philadelphia. It was a 10-round fight. We was fighting for some type of NABA, some title that I ain't really know too much about, but it was a good fight. You know what I'm saying? It was 10-round fights. But clearly, out of 10 rounds, I know I won at least 7. You know what I'm saying? I came on, he won the first 2 early rounds, but then I came on, I was backing him up, hitting him with everything other than the kitchen sink. But, I was in his backyard. I was coming up for the fight. I wasn't supposed to win. I didn't have the glitz and glamour record. So they made it a draw. I could probably say that about every draw on my record, actually. You know what I'm saying? I believe every draw on my record, I clearly won the fight big time, but they gave me draws. So those are all good fights that I could say, man, I really got the goods on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the draws might come up, because that's unfortunately such a common trick in boxing, isn't it? But was that the same type of thing with, obviously, like a lot of your fights, there was a lot of ones that went the distance and everything. When you look on your record, there's a couple of early stoppages. You mentioned the Kirkland one and whatnot. Was that mainly due to like not having the time to prepare type of thing? Was that more what caused those situations?
Believe it or not, the Kirkland fight for me was a mental deal. Like if I could give you a little bit of the background story behind the Kirkland fight. So I was a young kid, me and my girlfriend and my kid had moved from Wilson, North Carolina to Atlanta, Georgia, right? And we was staying in like a little, I think they call it in town suites, a little motel, right? So I was kind of in the gym, kind of not in the gym. I was in between moving, right? So I really won't in the gym, but I needed to get into a place. I needed to get the money to get out of this in-town suites so I can move into an apartment. So I got the fight for the Kirkland fight. I got the call for the Kirkland fight, and it was enough money for me to, you know what I'm saying, get into my place. So my mental going into the fight, being that they called me maybe 3 weeks before the fight, I think they did, because I fought a fight like 2 weeks before the Kirkland fight because I was trying to get the money to get into my place. So I took the fight and I went the distance and lost a decision. And then they called me for the Kirkland fight, and there was a ESPN fight, so there was a bigger fight. And I was like, yo, this is enough money for me to get into my place. So mentally, all I was thinking about was taking care of my kid and my girlfriend and getting us out of the in-town suites into this place. So when I got to the fight, you know what I'm saying, I really, and matter of fact, more than that, I didn't have a trainer. I had a guy that I was working with, but he wasn't my trainer. I kind of just showed up with this guy, and he had been like helping me out for a little while. So when I got to the Kirkland fight, it was kind of a big deal. It was ESPN. They was talking about him being the next this, that, he's a knockout guy. And I'm like in the dressing room, and I literally can only think about, yo, I need to cash this check so I can move into my apartment. So when I got into the ring, the fight started, and it's like ding, and I went out, and it's just like I didn't have it in me to fight that night. Like, you know what I'm saying? He didn't even hit me with nothing that hurt me. If you looked at the video, I'm pretty sure you seen that little clip that they got on the online. Like, he never hit me with, it was just I took a knee. I kind of like gave up in the fight because I mentally was never really prepared for the fight. I just wanted to get the check. So mentally I had checked out before I got in the ring. Like, he never really hit me hard. And then I just made a decision. Like, I did that like maybe 2 or 3 times in my career because I was going through something like mentally. Just I would show up for the fight, and the fight would start, and I just would like take a knee because I just didn't feel it mentally. It was like my mental demons beating me up all on the inside. And I did that like 2 or 3 times, and then I was in a fight one time and I was about to do it, and I was like, I'm never going to quit again. Like, if somebody beat me, they got to beat me. I'm not going to quit on myself. But yeah, that's what happened with the Kirkland fight. I just quit in that fight. I really didn't. He didn't beat me up. He didn't knock me out. People would say, "Oh, it was a knockout. You got hit. You took the knee." I got hit, and I made a decision to quit in that fight, which is something a fighter should never do. And I never forgive myself for it. Those are like moments in my career I look at where I could wish I could take back. Because to me, honestly, I had the ability to beat Kirkland. Kirkland was a wild guy. He threw punches from everywhere. I had real good boxing ability when I showed up to fight and had good heart and determination about doing it. But yeah, that's what happened in the Kirkland fight, man. I just had so much going on at home behind the scenes. I was in the midst of moving, trying to get my family out of this little hotel room that I was staying in. And I just wanted to get the check.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. And I mean, it's one of those things where, you live and learn at the end of the day, man. You live and learn, and, providing for your family. I mean, who can fault that? Nobody can fault that. Um, no, nobody can disrespect that. Um, I mean, I appreciate your honesty, to be honest, in that way, because coming from the heart, though, like I said to you when we were setting this up, it's going to be raw, it's going to be the highs and the lows, and we've definitely talked about some of the highs. Okay, these are a couple of the lows and everything. But you live and learn and you grow through the process, at the end of the day. And that's all I can say about that is, well, obviously, even like you said, the principle of like quitting in fights and things like that. Okay, I don't agree with that, but at the same time, everybody in their life has done something where you look back on it and you think, man, what was I thinking when I did that? Everybody's done that. So again, taking the shame out of it, man, and just focusing on the positives, like the fact you got your family out of that situation and everything. Hopefully, that makes it worth it.
100%. So that was when like those was the moments that really, like, man, that was a situation where I could have really capitalized, in my career. And those are moments that I look back at and I regret, you know what I'm saying? Like, wow, I could have done better. But it was just the circumstances that I happened to be in at the time. And it was just bad choices on my part. You know what I'm saying? I don't make excuses for myself, you know what I'm saying? But it was just making bad choices at the time, made bad decisions, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, obviously with this talk, I knew that was going to be coming up. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I started to talk with the things to be proud of, because you've got a lot to be proud of in your career. But the thing is, when people are making their way the hard way, like what you were doing and everything like that, without the managers, without the support and things like that, sometimes you do get sort of put under pressure to make these type of decisions, by circumstances. And sometimes when our back is against the wall in life and everything like that, you can genuinely look at it and say, well, look, man, those were the options I had. And I'm not into using that as any type of excuse of like, oh, you can blame circumstances and say, oh, it was this or it was that. But sometimes it really is, sometimes there's no other way about it of saying, well, look, you, it's a business decision, and especially like when your family's involved. So flipping that on its head though, what was the fight where you would say you gave it your all, you left it all in the ring and you came out of the ring with thinking, you know what, I did my absolute best type of thing? Because you said there, you'd never quit again, you'd never knock one on the head and say walk out. So on the flip side of that, what was the one, whether you won, lost, draw,
Yeah.
where you came out and you thought, you know what, man, I gave it my absolute all. I left it all in there. Which one stands out for that?
Man, I had a good fight with this guy in Detroit named Leonardo Tyner, man. And I mean, I won almost every round. I gave it a good go, you know what I'm saying? And man, like I know I won the fight, did my thing, had a great night, came out. We was in Detroit fighting in the Detroit Pistons Stadium. It was stars in the building, had a great night, come out, win every round, and didn't get the decision. You know what I'm saying? What are those type of deals? But that Leonardo Tyner fight is definitely a night that I had a good fight and pulled out the stops and succeeded to myself, even though I didn't get this decision. I know I just, man, when I came out of the ring, I had people asking for my autograph. You know, man, that was a great fight. Like I used to have a lot of fights like that where I wouldn't get the decision, but I would get out the ring and I would have people that still want, hey, can I get your autograph? Man, I thought you won that fight. Yeah, you're a great fighter, man. You should get some people with you. No, I used to get that type of stuff a lot in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know something, we've talked about quite a bit at the moment. And for people's attention spans and everything, we'll wrap it up shortly, just because you know what it's like with people taking a
Yeah,
lot in and everything. I'd like to get your advice though for the young guns out there, people who are up and coming. Now, I know there's a lot of advice you would give, and it's probably too much to give here all in one go. But if there was a couple of like essential ingredients, if you like cooking a meal, that people you would say to people either for boxing or for life in general. I mean, I don't mind which sort of avenue this goes down. What would be some of your advice for people learned from the things you got right in your life and from the things you got wrong and learned the hard way?
man, as far as boxing go, if you want to be a successful fighter in the boxing game, I would advise you, to take your time, have some amateur experience, get you some amateur fights under your belt. And whenever you do want to become a professional fighter, if you feel you got what it takes to succeed in the game, you need management, promotion, maybe a lawyer, some people to move you along the way, because in the boxing game, it's not really about the best fighter. It's about being the best moved fighter, the fighter that they take that process with and they protect you until you're ready to be the fighter that they want you to be. Because when you're coming up as a fighter, if you're just taking fights against any and everybody, you're going to lose. You're not going to succeed because it's just too much going against you. So, if you want to succeed in the boxing game, you need guidance. You need somebody that's going to lead you and guide you and also take care of you as a fighter, not put you in positions where you're, set up to fail. You know what I'm saying? And even in life, and in life, you take your time, you stay humble, you move the right way, you do the right things, and normally you get the right opportunities to succeed. You know what I'm saying? But definitely as a fighter, man, you gotta be smart. You gotta know when the timing is right to take that chance. You can't take every fight, and don't chase the money. People used to say I was chasing money because I was taking these fights that I shouldn't have took at the time when I shouldn't have took them. But I wasn't really chasing the money. I just needed the money because I had responsibilities. But yeah, don't chase the money, because the little bit of money that you accumulate, even fighting big name guys, at the time you fighting them on their way up, if you protect yourself and you take that slow road and you build that record, you fight this same guy. Like, say, I fought Andre Berto when I was a 50-50 guy. I was like, a 50-50 fighter. I won half, lost half. If I fight Andre Berto as an undefeated guy, man, I'm making triple, quadruple the money. You know what I'm saying? So as a fighter, man, take your time, get you some people around you that are a part of the boxing game, that know the boxing game, and can put you in position. Because other than that, you have no shot. As a fighter, the boxing is a business, and if you don't know the business aspect of it, you have no shot at succeed. It doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are, how tough of a fighter you are, if you don't know the business side of it and you don't have people around you to protect you, train you, put you in position, to succeed, you can really not even think about succeeding in the boxing game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some solid advice there, and it's advice that's from the heart as well, because like I said at the beginning, there's some lessons you've learned from good experiences, but there's some lessons that have come the hard way and everything. I mean, I appreciate you being such an open book with this conversation that we've had today and everything, because not everything we've talked about is easy to talk about. I respect that some of these things are quite personal to you. So the fact that you're sharing them publicly like this, I've got a lot of respect for that, man. Thank you. Before we wrap this up, really the last question is an open-ended thing. Is there anything else that you would like to say to people who are watching this around the world, whether they're people who know you and everything, or whether they're people who've heard about you for the first time and they're listening to this? Anything else you'd like to say? Anything else that's on your mind, really?
Oh man, I would like to give a shout out to my first trainer, my godfather James Jones, man. He was a real guy, man. If not for him, I wouldn't have knew how to fight, as well as he kind of took care of me for a long time and set me up to succeed. Even though he couldn't be a part of my later boxing career, I would definitely like to give him a shout out with this opportunity. And man, just check me out, man. I'm still around. I'm still training up here in North Penn in Pennsylvania. I'm in the gym. I'm training fighters. I have a son coming up. He's 13 years old. Hopefully you'll see him on the boxing scene soon. You know what I'm saying? Martinus Clay Jr. He's 3-4 times better than me. And he has me to lead him and put him in the right position when the time comes. So, hopefully you'll see more from me, man. And, God bless everybody. I love my family, love my wife. I got a daughter. Shout out to her. She's getting ready to graduate from law school. Martina Clay, my first daughter. Mattia in college over in Millersville. And then my son, Martinez. Shout out to everybody, man. And, um, the old guys still around, what I'm saying? Some guys never forget about the boxing ring and never leave. The sport never leaves them. I'm one of those guys, man. I'll forever be a fighter, whether I was good, bad, or indifferent, whatever you think about me, I'll forever be a fighter, true and true, like, 100%. I'll always be, magnificent Martinez Clay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Thank you so much for your time, man. Thank you so much for being an open book. And I hope that with this, we've not only set the record straight and everything for people in some important ways, you know, and people have heard your own words, and you know, hopefully I've been able to put you in a position to uh, basically have the power to speak out, you know, to people and reach out to people. So you know, that's wonderful, but also we share some life lessons as well that I hope will sort of filter on down and you know, reach some people and help guide them even a little bit in their journey through life, you know, and their journey through sports as well. So on those counts, man, I'm very happy. Some great, you know, fun stories as well that we've heard about some of your fights. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and it's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the opportunity to, say my part and have my say because, like I say, nobody ever wants to hear about this side, but it's always two sides to the story. For every guy that wins, there's a guy that loses, and you never know what's on the other end of the wins and the losses until sometimes a good person like such as yourself gives a person an opportunity to speak. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. God bless you and your family as well. And it's been a pleasure with this. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.